Hello, this is Camille Aguirre coming to you with First Readings, a podcast for writers and readers who want to read stories aloud. Like all authors and readers, I hear wonderful voices in my head when I'm reading or writing, but my voice sounds nothing like them, and that totally throws me out of the story. I don't like the sound of my own voice, but writers sometimes need to do readings in public. And in this modern internet age, anybody might want to read and record books for audio or video. So this series is about my adventures in getting used to my voice, learning to do different voices, and my ongoing adventures in learning to record better audio. Today I'll talk about getting used to your own voice, and I'll read an excerpt from a Golden Age mystery by Frances and Richard Lockridge. Most people hate public speaking. And when they have to do it, say when they want to speak before a school board or make a presentation at work, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to get it right. They rehearse and plan it all out and generally find that it's pretty stressful to go from no experience to making an important presentation in one go. So here's the secret. Don't wait until you have to do it for real. Don't start with rehearsing and planning. Don't try to do voices or be dramatic. Heck, don't even try to read the material silently before reading it aloud. Just read it to yourself, or to your cat, in private. Actually, the cat may not even be a good idea. I started this by reading to Max, and he was not impressed. And dogs tend to worry about you, especially if you show real emotion, and that can totally throw you off. So I mostly just read to my computer guardians, Toothless, Agent Coulson, and Mr. Peabody. But you know what? Now that I think about it, Toothless is looking at me kind of funny too, and Mr. Peabody looks doubtful. I guess I'll just read to Coulson. He's a good listener. Look, if you're shy, turn pictures to the wall. Read in a dark closet. But do read where you can hear your own voice, because that's what you're trying to get used to. Don't worry about making mistakes. Don't correct yourself unless it bothers you. And if it does bother you, then slow down your reading. Read shorter passages for a while. You're just trying to get your brain and your tongue to work together. When you feel comfortable with your reading, then you can move on to reading more difficult passages, reading in a more expressively, and using different voices. And that we'll start to talk about next time. Oh, and one other thing. It might not be a good idea to read your own work to yourself. As a writer, you likely have some very specific voices in your head, and it will throw you off. So read something by someone else. It will be a lot easier, and you will be a lot less self-conscious. As for me, I've been rereading some of my old favorites from the Golden Age of mystery writing. Right now, I'm reading a lot of Frances and Richard Lockridge, writers who are almost completely out of print, though you can find their books used or at the Open Library online. And after a month of reading these to Agent Coulson, I feel ready to record and edit. This will be my first public reading. Luckily, I'm doing it while hidden in my basement with the cat, Toothless, Peabody, and Coulson. We're reading the first 3 pages of Murder in a Hurry, which was published in 1950. This is under copyright, but it has been out of print for many years, and I hope to encourage people to go to Amazon and click on the button that says, "Tell the publisher I want to see this on Kindle." Maybe we can get some of these books back into print. And now, here begins the story. It is an inconsiderable street, neither long nor wide, and it is appropriately modest. As if even further to shorten its length, it bends in the middle, abandoning a course which is roughly west by south to pursue one which is by a degree or two north of west. This sort of behavior on the part of streets is familiar enough to those who live in downtown New York, but many feel that West Kep Street somewhat overdoes it. Those who live in West Kep Street, though there is no East Kep Street, and as far as anyone knows there never was, speak of it with an odd mixture of fondness and apology. It is, they say, the funniest little street and the hardest to find. It is certainly hard enough to find. Taxicab drivers who can go unerringly, and by one of the shorter routes, to the always somewhat preposterous intersection of West 4th and West 12th Streets, are baffled when Kep is mentioned. Taking strangers there, they pause to inquire the way of other hackers, and even, at a last resort, of traffic patrolmen. Such inquiries are seldom satisfactorily answered, nor are the residents of the neighborhood often much more helpful. They have heard of it. It is certainly around here somewhere. It is over that way, probably. But perhaps, on the other hand, it is over this way. But then, more often than not, they decide they probably were thinking of Gay Street, which also has a crook in it and runs from nowhere in particular to nowhere of importance. Homing kept streeters do not, therefore, precisely reveal their destination to cab drivers or to friends who have agreed to drop them off. They assign a more comprehensible objective, a nearby landmark, and promise to guide from there. Expecting valued guests, they commonly arrange to meet them at the nearest subway station and lead on by hand, as one living in the trackless suburbs will meet visitors by the white barn which cannot be missed, but often is, and is on your right just before you come to that series of forks which can in no manner be described. And having finally been led to West Kep Street, visitors are unimpressed and, not wishing too much to offend local pride, there is nothing, not even West Kep Street, of which someone cannot be proud, are apt to say hesitantly that it is a very quaint little street. But even this term, unaffirmative as it is not particularly applicable. West Kep Street is not lined by crooked little houses with window boxes and red doors. Patchin Place is more quaint. McDougal Alley has it all over West Kep Street for oddity. The buildings on either side of West Kep Street are 4- and 5-story tenements, most of them still with the indigenous stoops. They have, to be sure, been reconstructed internally, so that now instead of large inconvenient flats they contain, in most cases, small inconvenient apartments, which are entered through the kitchenette. The street itself is absurdly narrow. 2 cars could hardly pass, even where two-way traffic is allowed. Car owners living in West Kep Street park habitually half on the sidewalks, which is manifestly illegal, but the police seldom visit West Kep Street, which is otherwise generally law-abiding. Firemen assigned to the nearest company sometimes shudder when they think of West Kep Street, knowing that no hook and ladder could be got around the corner and that the buildings, in spite of their new fire-resistant staircases, are merely waiting to go up in flames. But so far, none of them ever has. All things considered, it would be difficult to find anywhere in New York a location less attractive to commercial enterprise than West Kep Street. At both ends of it there are, to be sure, shops, but they front on streets which, by comparison, are thoroughfares, and they present their flanks only to West Kep. Those one might expect. But halfway along West Kep itself, and just where it bends, as an over-tall man stoops a little to make himself less conspicuous, there is nevertheless a shop. It occupies the ground floor of one of the 4-story buildings. It is reached by going down 3 steps, and in recent months has been vacant. One may still see the sign it last bore, J.K. Halder, Pets. Curious people wandering through, and generally lost in, West Kep Street, stop to peer through the shop's dusty front window, and they see nothing for their pains. There are no longer any pets at Mr. Halder's pet shop, nor is there any longer a Mr. Halder. The pets are elsewhere, and so, of course, may be Mr. Halder, but he is no longer alive. He was alive at 10:15 on the night of May 23rd. He left a cab at the eastern end of West Kep Street and walked down the street to his shop. He was an erect, slim man, and, although it was a warm evening, he wore a light top-coat over his dinner clothes and a suitable dark hat on his gray hair. He was 72 years old, and recently had been feeling older than his years justified. He was not thinking about this at the moment. He was very annoyed about something else. He shook his head as he walked toward the shop, and once said a few angry words. But there was nobody near enough to notice his shaking head or to overhear the words, and this, as things turned out, was rather a pity. So that's it for this episode of First Readings. The book was Murder in a Hurry by Frances and Richard Lockridge. Voice, recording, and sound editing by Camille Laguerre. The theme music is Salut d'Amour by Edward Elgar from a collection titled Royalty-Free Music, Greatest Piano. See you in the funny papers.